Hey, what's good, y'all? It's Stinger, your local cryptozoologist. If you see any wacky creatures, let me know. And today we're going to be going over how to make a beat for Yeat's newest album, 2093. I'm still kind of torn on how I feel about the album, but I really like the production and the experimentation on this album. And I used to really like producing in the cyberpunk genre, so this kind of brought a resurgence in my love for that genre. So without any further yapping, the beat that we're going to be going over today sounds a little something like this. So there's going to be a lot to learn in terms of this beat. I'm going to break it down piece by piece and try to make it as easy to digest as possible. But as always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below and I will always answer them. All right, so the first part of this beat that we're going to go over is the melody. And the first part of the melody that we're going to go over is arpeggios. Now, in this style, arpeggios are damn near crucial. You need some kind of moving arpeggiated synth. And I have a couple go-to VSTs when it comes to arpeggios, but for this, I decided to go with Analog Lab 5. Analog Lab is kind of hit or miss when it comes to arpeggios, but there are some really cool hidden gems within this VST. And in terms of melodies in this style, I'm gonna show you a little hack to find perfect sounds for them. You're gonna go over to the Explore tab, hit Styles, and then go to Synthwave. Pretty much everything in that category is going to be perfect for making these kind of melodies. And the preset that I used is the Never Ending Circle preset. So now let's actually go over the pattern itself. And the pattern that I'm playing here is stupid simple. Essentially, all I'm doing is playing this D minor chord twice, and then afterward playing a D suspended second. And essentially all that means is we're taking that third of the minor chord and putting it down by one semitone. I don't like using this word, but that's pretty much a hack when it comes to getting dark sounds in your melodies. And aside from those chords, I'm literally just doing some layering. Like down here, I just have the D, which is the root note of that chord. Up here, I have the D as well. And then up here, I'm just playing this A sharp to give the melody a little bit more suspense. Because as you can see down here, we're playing an A. And since those notes are a half step away from each other, there's going to be a lot of suspense built as a result. So with that being said, this is what our main arpeggio sounds like. And then the next arpeggio that I laid down is just going to be an arpeggio I made within the piano roll. And all it's playing is our root note being D, as well as the third of that chord and that suspended second right there. And to make these kind of arpeggios within your piano roll, you could either draw them in by hand, or you could hit the shortcut Alt-A and it'll bring up the arpeggiator. So with that being said, this is what this arpeggio sounds like. And in terms of effects on those arpeggios, for the first arpeggio, the only noticeable effect that I threw on is going to be diode distortion from Serum FX. And then for the second arpeggio, I threw down a bit crusher. Throwing down distortion effects like these are a super easy way to make your melodies stand out a little bit more. All right, so now that we've covered arpeggios, which is the main portion of our melody, we're gonna go over some less important but still notable aspects of the melody. And the first of which is gonna be chords. For this, literally all I'm doing is playing our original minor suspended second chord progression. And the preset that I'm using is the Dreams of Oxygen patch from Analog Lab. Having some set chords like this lying underneath the arpeggio makes the main chord progression of the arpeggio more prominent and more noticeable. And it also just kind of acts as a bed for the rest of the melody to sit on. The next thing we're going to briefly cover in terms of the melody is going to be bass. And yet again, the bass that I used is the Dirty Tourist bass from Analog Lab. And I just have this playing the root note of our melody. And for these kind of beats, it's important to have a hard ass bass sound that's going to stand out a lot in the mix. And that's exactly what this does. All right, so now we're going to go over some optional aspects of the melody. The first of which is going to be soundscapes. Now, as I mentioned, soundscapes are optional for these kind of beats, but they are very useful in terms of filling in space in the melody and making it sound much more big. And for these kind of cinematic cyberpunk type beats, making your melody and your beat as a whole sound big is very important, and soundscapes can really help you achieve that sound. And then the next optional component is going to be vocal chops. Yet again, this isn't something that's going to make or break your melody or your beat as a whole, but it's good for introducing variation in your melody and your beat. I use this vocal chop in the second portion of our chorus just to add some variation, and it assists in maintaining the energy throughout the beat. And now that we've gone over everything in terms of the melody, this is what it sounds like all together. Alright, so now that we've gone over the melody, let's go over the next portion of this beat, which is the drums. And the drums are relatively simple in this beat, though I do want to mention that the majority of the drum sounds, as well as that soundscape and the vocal chops, are all coming from one kit. That's going to be the Cyberpunk 2077 from Oversampled. This pack, believe it or not, has 2077 sounds, and they're all perfect for making these cyberpunk type beats. This is not sponsored, nor does Oversampled even know that I'm speaking of this kit right now. I just genuinely love that kit, and I want to bring it to attention, especially when it comes to these kind of beats. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go over the drums. The first thing that you're going to need is a 4 on the floor kick pattern. And what that means is that your kick is hitting every single measure. So boom, 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 boom. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next thing that you're going to need is a snare. And I have that hitting on the 2 and the 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The next thing that you're going to need is a hi-hat. And I have this playing a 16th note pattern, but I removed the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. And this is purely just to make room for that kick. The next thing that I threw down is a crash just to add some impact. And the final aspect that I threw down is a tom. And I have this just playing a super simple fill that leads into the next portion of the drums. And it also assists with building that retro cyberpunk theme. So now that we've covered the drums, I want to go over some melodic effects that are very important for these kind of beats. The first melodic effect that is almost crucial to these kind of beats is going to be Filter Freak, or some kind of filter automation plugin. I personally like to use Filter Freak just because of the vast array of presets within the VST, and I have this on pretty much every single one of my melodic components. And I use this essentially just to add movement in the melody where there is none. And these filter sweeps right here are exactly what's adding our movement in our melody. And the second essential melodic effect that you're going to want to use is Kickstart. This is essentially just a sidechain ducking VST, and I have this set to 1/4 notes so that the melody is ducking every single time the kick hits. This just leaves more room for the kick to do its thing, and also just makes the beat that much more bouncy. And now we're going to go over the final portion of this tutorial, being arrangement. And I know this tutorial is already pretty long, so I'm just going to briefly cover arrangement. For our intro, I'm using a triangle low pass filter from Fruity Love Filter, and I have this automated so that it plays for the first 7 bars and then the mix level decreases gradually. And for the intro, all I'm having play is this set of chords that we covered before, as well as this arpeggiated bass line from Analog Lab. And as you may have been able to hear, I have Filter Freak on that bass sound. After the intro, I lead into the pre-chorus, in which I'm playing the majority of our melodic components, being the chords, our second arpeggio, and the bass. And then for our first arpeggio, I have it playing in the pre-chorus, but I have this low-pass filter automation that brings it in gradually and leads into the chorus. And also something that you can do to make your beat sound more cinematic is to use transition sounds. So I use a whoosh to lead into the pre-chorus, a downsweep at the start of the pre-chorus, and then a riser to lead into the chorus. I leave out a couple of things in the first 8 bars, such as our second arpeggio and that vocal chop, and then I bring that in for the second part of the chorus to maintain some energy within the beat and keep the listeners listening. So with that being said, I'm just going to play the intro and the pre-chorus leading into the chorus, just so you can hear the importance of all the automation and the transition sounds. Alright, so with that being said, that is going to pretty much cover how to make cyberpunk beats in the style of Yeat's newest album, 2093. I thoroughly hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learned something new. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the comments down below and I will do my best to answer them. Also, consider checking out my Patreon where I post the FLPs to all of my beats in all of my videos, including this one. That way, if you wanted to study the mixing, mastering, arrangement, melody, drums, all that kind of stuff, it's right at your fingertips. And finally, consider subscribing as I post 1 tutorial a week and 2 sound kits a month. Other than that, that's going to be it. Peace.